You know, we all use our imagination, right? Every single day. But have you ever really stopped to think about what it's for? I mean, is it just a fun little playground for daydreams, a way to escape the daily grind for a few minutes? Or could it be something way more powerful, like a tool that's actively designing the world you'll one day inhabit? Let's find out.
All right, so let's jump right in with the big question from our source material. Is your imagination just an escape route, or is it a creative superpower? On one hand, you've got this idea of imagination as our own private movie theater, a place to just get away from it all. But on the other hand, it's described as this incredible power that literally builds reality. So, which is it? Let's dig in and unpack this.
Okay, first, let's tackle this idea of imagination as just an escape. And there's a really powerful analogy for this: the imagination theater. Think of it like this. It's when you make a conscious choice to just check out of the here and now and completely dive headfirst into a fantasy.
And this quote, man, it really hits the nail on the head. The whole point, the ideal use of our imagination, isn't to create some other world to hide out in. It's meant to enhance and build upon the one we're already living in. It's supposed to be a tool for improvement, not a tool for avoidance.
This timeline just lays out the cost of that avoidance perfectly. Imagine this. You spend an entire week inside this super immersive theater. For 7 straight days, the story on that screen is your reality. You're completely lost in it. But what happens when you finally walk out? Well, the real world didn't just hit pause for you. All your responsibilities, your bills, your relationships, they've been piling up consequences while you were checked out. The fantasy might have felt real for a week, but the fallout? Oh, that's actually real.
Okay, so we've seen the theater idea. Now let's completely switch gears and go from the theater to, say, a workshop. If using your imagination as an escape comes with a price, what does it look like to use it as a true creative power? Well, our source material has another amazing metaphor for this: the soul's 3D printer. So, if your soul has a 3D printer, you gotta ask, what's the ink it uses? The source calls this mystic energy. The best way to think of it is like the fundamental raw material of the spirit world. It's this formless substance just waiting for a command, waiting to be shaped by a focused imagination.
So how does this whole thing actually work? How do you go from a thought to a thing? It's surprisingly direct, really a 3-step process. First, your imagination provides the blueprint, a clear, steady design. Second, that blueprint directs the raw mystic energy, which is your ink. And third, bam! Instantly, with 0 time lag, what you imagine becomes real. It's literally creation at the speed of thought.
But, and this is a huge but, there's a catch. If that blueprint in your mind is blurry or if it's unstable and keeps changing, the whole creation process just fails. An undisciplined imagination that's just flitting from one idea to the next can't provide that stable design needed to give form to the energy. Just like the quote says, the house never gets built.
And this is where the stakes get incredibly high, because how we train and use our imagination here and now leads to 2 vastly different outcomes, 2 completely different worlds, built from 2 totally different kinds of blueprints.
So you've got 2 paths. On one side, you have this, well, a living hell, right? It's a world that's automatically 3D printed from what's called a karmic pit, basically a giant collection of all our own negativity, our fears, and our dark fantasies. It's the end result of an undisciplined soul. But on the other side, you have a heavenly world. This one isn't automatic. It's co-created by aligning our creative power with a bigger, divine plan. It requires mastery, wisdom, and control. The choice is pretty stark: automatic chaos or conscious creation.
Okay, so that chaotic, negative world, how does that even happen? What's the engine behind it? The mechanism described in the source is something called karmic debt. Let's break down what that actually means. Well, the source explains it kind of like this. Think about it. We're all given this pure, clean cosmic energy. But when we take that energy and pour it into fantasies of escape or anger or violence, we basically misqualify it. We corrupt it. It becomes heavy and dense, and it sinks into this personal reservoir, this pit. This karmic debt is just the accumulated weight of all those negative daydreams, and sooner or later it has to be dealt with.
And this quote just simplifies it perfectly. It's the spiritual equivalent of racking up a massive credit card bill. We buy the pleasure of a fantasy now by pushing the payment, the pain of dealing with that negative energy, off to some later date. It feels amazing right now, but man, that bill, it always comes due.
And here's where it gets even trickier. Just like a real credit card, this karmic debt racks up interest and penalties. This chart shows the trap perfectly. Let's say your principal debt is 100 units. You might be putting in a ton of effort, say 25 units of energy, to try and pay it down. But if the interest and penalties on your debt are 20 units, you're only actually reducing the principal by 5. It feels like you're running in place, working your tail off just to keep the whole thing from spiraling out of control.
All right, so how do we wrap our heads around all this? The theater, the 3D printer, the debt? It's a lot, I know. But the source uses one final, modern metaphor that makes it all click into place. Think of your consciousness as a playlist.
So here's the bottom line. It all comes down to this. Every thought, every daydream, every fantasy you keep coming back to is like adding a song to a playlist in your soul. And in the spirit world, that soul's 3D printer just hits play, and your reality is built, automatically, from whatever you've queued up. If your playlist is full of violent, escapist fantasies, well, that's the world you're going to get. The goal, then, is to become a conscious curator of that playlist, to use your imagination to design a better reality, one that's aligned with a more constructive, divine plan.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to ask ourselves. If our imagination is actually the blueprint for a future reality, not just some escape hatch from the present one, then it's worth asking, what blueprint are you designing, right here, right now, with your thoughts today? What world is taking shape on your own personal drafting table?